Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thanks for having me this morning. I am so excited to be here, and I am even more grateful for this invitation to join you all this morning and to talk a little bit about what I'm working on and how I incorporate native plants into my work and everything really that I do. Um, I have been working with the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District for almost 8 years now. And throughout that whole time, no matter what my job title has been or what I've been working on, what my programming is, I've always had the good fortune to work with master gardeners, no matter what I'm doing. And so I have learned so much from you all over the past 8 years. And I'm excited to get to hopefully introduce maybe something new to you all today, or at least, talk more about how we can all sort of marry our missions together and focus on these native plants. I should be very clear and very transparent that I am not a plant expert. I can talk about how to use these plants and incorporate them, but when it gets to specific species and species ID and things like that, I'm still learning quite a bit. But we will hopefully learn some more about that from you all as well. Nice. So every time I do a presentation, I do like to talk a little bit about the Soil and Water District first, just because a lot of folks don't know who we are or what we do. Soil and water conservation districts actually exist all across Virginia. There are 47 districts in the state. Um, Most of them serve at least one or multiple localities. Here at the Colonial District, we serve Charles City, New Kent, James City, York County, and the city of Williamsburg. So those are sort of our main focus areas. We do also have some partnership agreements with localities outside of that area, so we can expand a little bit. But districts are considered political subdivisions of the state. We're not quite a state agency, but we do receive state funding. Um, Everything we do is voluntary. So we are all about technical assistance and most of the time financial assistance to help folks, whether it's a homeowner on a residential lot or a large scale agricultural producer, for trying to get folks to implement as much conservation as possible on their property. And oftentimes we're able to provide financial assistance to do that. But that said, we have no enforcement authority, so we're not issuing fines, we're not dealing with permits and things like that. Historically, districts have been focused on large scale agriculture, so working with some of our commodity crop producers to increase conservation on those lands. But we've seen, as I'm sure you've all seen as well, we've seen a decrease in the number of large scale producers in this area and the amount of land being farmed. And so to try and address this changing population dynamic, we've implemented and created some more programs to try and address the more community-based side of our community, residential-based, I should say. And now to the fun stuff, the native plants and why we're all here. Um, First, I do want to do a little bit of language, and I'm going to do what everyone hates, and I'm going to read directly off the slide because, like I said, I do tend to get some of these terms mixed up. But I feel like these kinds of terms are changing, and there's new language, and there's a lot to keep up with in this world of working with native plants and trying to increase access to native plants. So, a strict na a strict native plant would be anything that occurs within a region without human intervention. Insects and other animals have co-evolved with these native plants for thousands of years. There's known relationships, there's known benefits, there's symbiotic um, partnerships there. And so those are our strict natives. Then we get into our cultivars, plants that are selected for a certain trait through intentional breeding, including hybridization. So these can be derived from native or non-native plants. You'll see down below, we have a term called nativars, which are going to be those cultivars of native plants
You can
specifically.
yell it already? I'm gonna get him his miracle drug. Okay. Said it will cause drowsiness, but since it's this one causes drowsiness as well, but
Important side effects. Okay. So yeah, so nativars, cultivars, natives, obviously, as much as we can, we try to stick to our strict native species, but that's really hard. It's hard to source those plants. Even just finding them locally and finding nurseries that produce them. So most often cultivars and nativars are our best bet. But it can get really tricky. You know, these species and varieties are bred for certain things. They're bred for petal size, petal color, um, bloom season, fragrance. Absolutely. They're bred for all of these different things, and making those changes can have a really big impact on that plant's role in the ecosystem. So if you change the petal color, an insect that depends on that plant may no longer be able to find it. If you change the bloom season, it may still not be it may not be a source of food or habitat for those species anymore. So these changes can have a really big impact and can really reduce um, the efficiency and the benefit of using those native species. On the flip side, you know, we can breed for disease resistance and pest resistance. So there's a lot of trade-offs there. And I don't know that there's really a perfect answer for how to proceed with that sort of evolution of these cultivars and nativars, but it is important to consider when we're thinking about increasing natives and adding natives back to our environment. Frozen. There we go. All right. So why natives? Why do we prefer native plants? They can provide year-round interest. I said I'm not a plant expert, and that's certainly true. But I will say that the common beautyberry is one of my favorite shrubs to see out and about because there's always something interesting to look at. It's got the beautiful berries, beautiful foliage, and there's just always something going on. They support wildlife habitat, provide food sources, of course. They help to build healthy soil. A lot of times our native species will have more developed and more structural root systems, so they help hold soil in place. Sometimes they actually fix nitrogen in the soil. They're legume species. So they have a really great benefit in improving the soil as well. But most importantly, they have co-evolved with that local ecosystem. So they have a place in the food web, they have a place in the habitat, and they have a place within that climate. And native plants belong everywhere. Sometimes I think we get a little siloed into thinking that native plants are just for pollinator gardens. And that is certainly a great place for them, but they belong everywhere. In home gardens, of course, in agriculture, we're starting to see some folks really shift towards wanting to bring these native corridors and native habitats into their large-scale agricultural operations because of the interest in pollination and supporting those pollinator species. And in urban settings, so this picture on the far right is a rain garden that is actively capturing some rain happening there. The main function of rain gardens is going to be stormwater capture and infiltration, but those native plants planted in that system are crucial to making sure that that rain garden can do what it's meant to do and provide habitat at the same time. So that's a little bit of sort of basics on natives and what we're talking about when we talked about natives. Stormwater is really my focus. It's kind of my bread and butter. So we're going to talk a little bit about stormwater basics so that then we can marry the two together. And so stormwater can be sort of an ambiguous term, but when I talk about stormwater, I'm talking about any water that falls during a storm that is not absorbed into the ground. So water that hits your roof and then falls into a downspout and hits your driveway, goes into the storm sewer. That's going to be stormwater runoff. Even water coming off the lawn that just can't infiltrate, that's going to be stormwater runoff. And we really care about stormwater runoff because in the course of its flow, it can pick up debris, it can pick up chemicals, pet waste, oil and grease from cars and things like that. And most often that stormwater runoff is some way, somehow making its way into our streams and our rivers and eventually the Chesapeake Bay. I should say that, of course, being in this location where we are right here in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Everything I do, all of our programs are all driven by cleaning up the bay. And so that's what we're really focused on here, is making sure that we can manage this water here before it gets into the bay and potentially causes any other issues. And so as we see an increase in development, in community development, residential development, we're seeing an increase in stormwater. And some of this is just, it just happens with that increase in impervious cover. Impervious cover includes things like driveways, walkways, roofs, all those kinds of things where water just cannot absorb. And so this diagram has sort of little stages of what we can expect in terms of percentages of runoff as we increase development. And you can see, so in the first image there, it's all a natural setting. We expect 0 to 20% of any water that comes in a storm to be runoff. Most of it's being infiltrated back into the ground, being used up by plants, and recharging any groundwater sources that may be underneath that soil. As we continue to develop and increase those impervious surfaces, we're seeing more and more of that water turning into runoff. And so like we talked about, it can cause pollution issues, can also really impact erosion and flooding downstream as this water picks up speed and energy and flowing through all these impervious surfaces, it can cause some real flooding issues. And so common causes of what I see on, at any given day working with residents and folks in the community, causes of these residential and stormwater issues, it really all comes back to water. Wind can be a source of erosion, development is a source of erosion, but what we're seeing mostly is water-based. So runoff from those impervious surfaces, concentrated flow from downspouts and gutters. It may not seem like a lot at times, but that concentrated flow coming out of a downspout can really cause some damage. Steep slopes, which we certainly have some of those around here. Poor soil and poor vegetative cover. And so I know in this picture here, we can see a really dense, healthy lawn versus no cover at all. Lawns often get a bad rap, I get it. But the point of this image is to show just how powerful vegetation can be in preventing some of those issues. And so now we can kind of work back in the importance of those native plants in stormwater management. So plants, of course, are vital in preventing that erosion from occurring, both above ground and below ground. So the stems and leaves and above ground growth are intercepting rainfall as it comes down. They're absorbing some of that energy of those water droplets and preventing that from breaking onto bare soil, which of course is far more likely to be broken down and eroded. And so by maintaining a healthy source of vegetative cover, we can intercept it. And then once that water does reach the ground, it's not moving so quickly. It's not quite carrying quite as much energy and is more likely to infiltrate into the ground below. And then native plants tend to have like I said, much stronger, deeper root systems, which can act as nets holding that soil in place. But of course, they've co-evolved, just like we've talked about. And so I'm gonna segue a little bit into the program that I work on mainly here. I'm sure some of you have heard about this before, the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. This is one of those financial and technical assistance incentive programs that I mentioned earlier that districts work on, and this is a big part of my job now. This program allows us to help provide technical assistance, and by technical assistance, I mean going out to your property and taking a look at what's going on and figuring out where your water is coming from, where it's going, how can we manage it, things like that. So advice and suggestions for those kinds of things, as well as, when available, financial assistance for addressing some of those issues. And so we'll talk about how the program works and all of that. But we can help landowners address things like erosion and excess runoff and poor vegetation and things like that. So there are 12 different practices that are eligible for funding through this program. We'll talk about the vegetated components of these. So we won't really get into impervious surface removal, permeable pavement, or dry wells. Won't get into all of these other ones either, but really wanted to focus on the planted ones today. But these are technically all eligible for that same assistance. But like I said, we'll talk about vegetated VCAP practices today, and these are the most common, the most popular ones that we're seeing interest in our service area. So conservation landscaping, rain gardens, riparian buffers, and living shorelines. All of these practices really depend on and rely on native plants to be able to function. So conservation landscaping, at its most basic, is the use of native plants to help hold soil in place. We often also use this practice to help folks who are having a lot of standing water issues or excess runoff on their properties. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but at its most basic, we are using native plants to hold this soil. And you can see here there's different types of conservation landscaping through our program. Most commonly, we're doing something called a native mixed bed, really similar to a traditional landscaped bed, just all native plants. This is an example photo here, before and after, of a resident in James City County who went through the program. As you can see on the left, the before picture, this whole slope around this cul-de-sac was his, and he was just having a really hard time getting anything to grow. So much so that his storm ditch had filled up completely with sediment. It was not functioning, water was backing up. He was one of the lucky few who got VDOT to come out and dig it out. And VDOT said, we're doing this once, we're not doing it again. And so he really had to figure out how to address that erosion on the slope. And so, traditional turf grass, he tried to put out seed, just wasn't taking. He couldn't water it, couldn't mow it. Of course, when it grows, there's just really, really tough to manage that kind of a slope. And so eventually he found us and our program, and we were able to work him into more of that conservation landscaping goal. And so you can see that this is an immediate after picture. So these plants are little. I should get an updated picture because this is a few years old now. But this hillside is now covered in native shrubs, grasses, flowering species, all different kinds of things. It's a really beautiful ecosystem now. And that soil is holding. And so he was really able to capitalize on the program and the native plants available and very quickly address that issue that he was having. And so this project did receive $7,000 through our program to help cover the cost of that installation. This is another example of some of the things we see when we're talking about excess runoff and standing water issues and ways that we can incorporate conservation landscaping to address these kinds of issues. This area before picture on the left had a lot of standing water issues, a lot of shade. You can see the moss there. We know it's wet and just could not get any sort of ground cover to really grow and take off. I'm sure you can also tell that this is an access route around the house. So they're walking here and disturbing that soil pretty consistently. And so this was just not, the landowner couldn't make this work. And so we were able, as you can see on the right, to come in and address this area with conservation landscaping. This is another immediately after install photo. This one is just a few months old. And so the landowner was able to install this walkway, so they still have their access. They're still going to be able to get around the home, but they've now added these native plants to help cover that soil and hold it in place. So I think we would all agree that it's a nice aesthetic change, of course, but the habitat and the ecosystem value of that is going to be really significant as well. This is our last conservation landscaping example. This one here, this is a home in Queens Lake. If we have any Queens Lake residents here, I love your neighborhood. I'm there all the time. There are a lot of slopes in Queens Lake. That's a challenging environment. This property here it's a little bit unbelievable to me still. The house is on a cliff. I don't know how it's there. I don't know, but it is. And a neighbor or the landowner had a lot of issues with just unbelievably steep slopes that she could not get anything to grow on. You can see that she had tried some terracing. It was sort of helping, but still losing a lot of soil. And so we were able to, again, come in with that conservation landscaping assistance and help to cover that soil and hold it in place. You can see in the finished photo on the right, she has some really lovely stone retaining walls. Those were an out-of-pocket expense for the landowner. That is typically not something our program will pay for, but we always want to make sure that we're working with the landowner for their goals for the property and what they want it to look like and how they want to use it. So they were able to incorporate those terraces along with the native plants behind them. And so now we'll get into rain gardens. Rain gardens are more of an infiltration practice than we would expect conservation landscaping to be. Rain gardens, we really want to see that water capture, that runoff capture, along with supporting these native plants. And so I find often a lot of times some confusion about where rain gardens are going to be most appropriate for the soil, and a lot of concern that rain gardens are mosquito breeding grounds and they're only holding water, and they're sort of more of a nuisance in the landscape. Rain gardens are meant to drain fully within 48 hours. If they're not draining that quickly, then that tells us that something's wrong in the system. Something's clogged. Perhaps the native soils aren't draining as well as we thought they would. But they are meant to drain. You shouldn't see standing water there. When they're installed, they're typically dug out into a little bowl shape with that flat bottom so that everything that comes, all the water that comes into the system will drain into the native soils below. So a lot of times the functionality of the rain garden is not something we actually see. We only see the plants, and certainly the plants are an important component of that uptake and using up some of that water, but it is a lot of times focused on what's happening underground. And so we'll look at a few examples of what we've been able to support through the VCAP program. This is another landowner up in Upper York County. You can see on the left that she almost had a pseudo rain garden already. She had this depression area in her landscape. If you see the tree on the right side of the depression, there's a really significant slope coming up off of that landscape, and it drains the cul-de-sac near right uphill and parts of her driveway. And so she was just seeing a lot of water coming down that slope, and having a difficult time managing it. And so she was interested in utilizing this rain garden to try and capture some of that water before it just washes down the back of her property. And so you can see an immediate post-construction picture on the right there. You can see her plants coming in. She had a lot of lovely shrubs. The contractor who installed this has really been embracing ragwort as a native species, and we've seen it in a lot of practices now, and it's really taking off, doing a really beautiful job. So this one is ragwort heavy, very cool. You can see the gravel around the edge of the rain garden there. That is intentional. Since all of that water coming into the system, or most of the water coming into the system, is coming across a forested area, we expect there to be a lot of leaf debris and sediment and things being carried in that water, and we don't want that debris to get into the rain garden basin and clog it up. And so that gravel is meant to act as a little barrier for that water to capture some of that debris and filter it out before that water gets into the system. So that's kind of an interesting feature. There are some ways that we can really specifically tailor these practices to a landscape and making sure that they're going to be functional for a long time. All of our rain gardens and all of our practices through the program are sized to treat a 1-inch storm. And so really tough to predict our storms these days. As I'm sure you've all seen, there's increasing frequency and intensity of storms. So is that 1-inch storm sizing enough? Sometimes no, sometimes yes. Tough to say, but that is what we're required to do by the state. Generally, these rain garden systems are excavated fully to anywhere 18 to 36 inches deep on a property, depending on the soil drainage and how much water we're expecting. So they can be a little bit of an excavation process, but it really is pretty site specific. Here's another example of a rain garden that was just completed earlier this summer in Ford's Colony. Has a really lovely little kidney bean shape. You can see in sort of the front center of the rain garden, there's that little green circle. That's a pop-up emitter from their downspout. So they have their downspouts buried from the home directly into the system. So we know all of that water from the roof area is being captured and treated by this rain garden. So that's really an ideal scenario for rain gardens because we have a direct source of water. We know what's coming in, we know what's treating it. And that pop-up emitter just pops up when the storm water gets into it. You'll also see some larger rock around the left-hand side of that rain garden. That's the overflow route. And so all of our systems are designed to have an overflow because, like I said, our storms are getting more intense, more frequent. And so we don't want this system to just drown. So that overflow route is there for any excess water that the system is not designed to treat to be able to have a stable exit. And then we'll talk a little bit about riparian buffers. Riparian buffers are essentially landscaped areas, mostly tree installations that are planted alongside a stream bank. Riparian buffers are very important in terms of preventing erosion into the stream and taking up any pollution or reducing nutrient pollution that may enter that stream. Those are two huge components. The third one is actually shade. So shading these streams, cooling down water temperatures. We're seeing a lot of changes in fish and aquatic populations because of temperature, not just because of potential nutrient pollution or chemical or bacteria pollution. Temperature has a really big role to play as well. So that's why a lot of times these riparian buffers are focused on tree plantings. And so there's a big push right now for installing riparian buffers in agricultural areas to make sure that those streams are protected and shaded and capturing anything that may come off the fields. So we haven't done a lot of riparian buffer work in my program, in my area. Hasn't been a lot of interest in it to date. It's always something we're looking to do and expand on. So if you know anyone who's interested, by all means, send them our way. And then lastly, this may not be super relevant to everyone, but we do a lot of living shoreline work and shoreline restoration. Living shorelines are essentially a way to mimic natural marshes and utilize the features of a natural marsh to prevent shoreline erosion and increase tidal habitat. So living shorelines often include some sort of structure out in the water itself. In the after picture here, you can see on the far right, there's that little line of concrete structures. Those are oyster pyramids. So little precast pyramid structures with oyster shell baked in. And so the idea is that new oysters will come and grow on those and further solidify that structure. But that structure is meant to absorb some of the tidal fluctuations or boat waves that may come in that would otherwise break on the shoreline and continue to cause that shoreline to erode. And so there's that structure, we call it a sill. There's sand fill behind it, and then there's marsh grass plugs planted behind it. And those marsh grasses are all native plants as well. So these will grow in over time and increase habitat and prevent that shoreline from washing away. So this is a really interesting, unique sort of component of what we get to do, but certainly with so much tidal waterfront around here, we have a lot of work to do. And so I wanted to not leave you, I'm not done, don't worry. I wanted to give you just some numbers of what we've been able to do with this program since July 1, 2024. We operate on the state's fiscal calendar, so everything is kind of June to July to June. We were able to fund 31 conservation landscaping projects in our service area, just us. Not everybody across the state. That number would be huge. But we funded 31 projects for a total of $213,832 in cost share funding. So that was money that went out to those landowners. We had 5 rain gardens come in for a total of $32,342. And then we had 15 living shorelines for a total of $434,360. So some pretty impressive dollar amounts going out the door and a lot of conservation being put on the ground, which is what we like to see. Yeah, so cost share is a term meant to essentially imply that we'll pay a portion of the total project cost. So we're sharing a cost, you're sharing a cost, everybody's contributing. I'll get to the rates and caps and whatnot. So there are some roadblocks, of course, with the program, with trying to implement these different practices on the property. One of the biggest roadblocks we see here is the water table. Being in the coastal region, we have a very high or a very shallow water table, and that can make things like rain gardens and permeable pavement and dry wells very challenging to function, because as that water is captured and meant to infiltrate, there's nowhere for it to go because the water table is too high. So that can cause some problems. More relevant to what we're talking about today is just the lack of native plants. So sourcing these plants can be very challenging, especially for a smaller sort of DIY project. Certainly there are contractors in the area that can find these plants wholesale or retail, but it is just no matter what, it can be quite a challenge. And the average homeowner, I know you all are doing a lot of work to educate folks on what's native and what's not, but we still see a lot of confusion about that and a lot of outreach work and assistance to be done. And so these are two different examples of solutions we can use to get around those roadblocks, not necessarily the lack of native plant roadblocks, but the water table at least. This picture on the left is what looks like a conservation landscaping project. Basically it is, but we call it a sponge garden because this landowner, their water table was far too high to do a rain garden. So instead, what they did, instead of digging out that bowl, they just used the same plants they would have otherwise used in the rain garden. So it's still taking up a lot of water. They still don't mind having wet feet. They can tolerate a drought when it's dry. And so it's meant to mimic the features of a rain garden, but just with the plants themselves. And then we also now have the ability to do rain gardens in a box, which are pretty cool systems that you can actually install directly on a downspout to capture that water in this boxed above ground area. And we use native plants planted into this system. So you still get a little bit of filtration and water uptake and things like that. So that's an interesting and new approach that we're hoping to try out soon. But just so you all know, it is an option as well. And so here's the table of those cost share rates and caps. We won't go through them all. This is all available online and happy to send my slides out if you'd like to see it more. Conservation landscaping, the payment rate, the cost share rate, so what the program would pay if you're approved would be 80% of the total cost of installation up to $7,000. So that is our rate and cap for that. The remaining 20% or whatever the cost is beyond 7,000 would then be an out-of-pocket expense for the landowner. The rain garden is the same rate, 80% up to 7. We didn't talk about dry wells, but they're also 80% up to 7. Let's scroll down here. Living shorelines are generally a very expensive practice to install, and so their cost share rate is 80% up to 30,000. That's one of the most highest cost share cap, I should say. And so the application process for this program, you would contact myself, someone in our office to set up a site visit so that we can come out to the property and see what's going on, see what you may be eligible for, and help you start to work through that program process. We'll do that site visit. If you have a contractor you want to work with, or you want recommendations for contractors or contacts for contractors, we can provide those. And we can work with whoever you want to have on your team. So we'll get through that application process, have to have a design, we have to have a cost estimate. If you need permits, then we have to have copies of those. So sometimes these application processes can get lengthy, but that's my job to help kind of guide everyone through it. Once the application is completed, then we'll send it through the review process. My board of directors here at this Colonial district has to approve, and the VCAP steering committee has to approve before you begin any work. So it can be a process, but hopefully there's a reward on the end. Speaking of that reward on the end, I always hate doing this. We've talked about, the opportunities in this program, the funding available. I do want to be very transparent that it is a competitive program. VCAP has been in existence for about 10 years now. I've been working on it for close to 6. And we have gotten to a point where there's such growth and such interest and such demand that the program, the amount of funding available cannot keep up with the demand. And so that has led to a more stringent, more strict review process for applications. And so we're seeing now that because there is a little bit of a lack of funding available, we're seeing some applications put on a wait list versus when they would have been funded fully otherwise. So do keep that in mind. I cannot guarantee funding, but I'm always happy to work with you all through the process and try to get to a point where you have a really competitive application. So do just keep that in mind. It's a great program. We've been able to do a lot of things with it, but it doesn't always work out. Also keep in mind that even if you have no interest in applying for the program, I'm always happy to come out, happy to talk to you about what's going on. Sometimes the best solutions for a property are not VCAP eligible. And so we'll talk through all of that too. There's no requirement to go through the program at all, just to get some advice or some suggestions. And so here are some resources that we really love to use. I hope that you all love to use these too. We're required. It's an interesting thing to me. There's a lot of conflict in some of these native resource guides as to what's really native and what's not. And so that can be a challenge as well. Our program requires us to use the digital atlas of Virginia flora to determine what's native and what's not. But we still like to use all of these other guides as well to try and get the best possible design or plant selection. And that's all I got. So my contact information is here on the screen. My coworker, Emma Rich, who also works on this program with me, her contact information is there. And I do have some program brochures and business cards and things like that up front if you'd like to ever get in contact or have us come out and see what we can do. I'm happy to entertain any questions if there are any. Mm-hmm.
What's the timing to be able to see the client contacts you and then also what percentage of applicants?
Sure, great questions. The timeline as far as how long an application takes really depends on the practice itself. So living shorelines are by far the longest. Those can take 6 to 9 months to a year because we're waiting on federal permits most likely. Conservation landscaping projects and things that are generally a little bit smaller, less intensive, don't require permitting, those can take 3 months from start to finish. A lot of that depends on if you DIY or if you hire a contractor, but generally about that 3 to 4 month range. We have rolling deadlines every month, so there's no specific time of year that you have to apply. Generally, we can meet you where you're at. And then approval percentages, that's a really interesting question. This change in the competitiveness of the program has just happened last month. Last month was the first time we saw a wait list implemented. And so I'm going to give you probably more background and information than you want, but the state has funded this program at $2 million per year. And so prior to, I would say, the start of this year, prior to January, that was enough. That was okay. Something happened in January, and ever since then, we have seen record interest and record number of applications every month to a point where the state leadership of this program said, whoa, we got to hold on. We're not gonna have any money left if we keep going and approving at the rate we're approving. And so I can give you some numbers for August. There were 40 applications submitted from across the state. 15 of those were mine, 15 at the Colonial District, for a total request of $508,000. And so $2 million for the year, that's a quarter of the year in 1 month. So just really, again, backs up that interest and demand for the program. Of the 15 applications I submitted, 4 were approved. And so that's not a great rate for us. We're hoping to get more approved as we go on. Like I said, there is a wait list, and so the applications that were not funded last month are automatically rolled into the next 3 months, in hopes that maybe other districts across the state won't submit as many applications, and you can move up the list for funding. Very fast stream and shade. And so the original question was, for the program, do the plants included always have to be native? And the answer is yes, they do have to be native per the digital atlas of Virginia Flora. And then plants in terms of a fast moving stream in shade. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And that kind of a system where it's a culvert, it's an intentional storm drain, I would look also at the structural stability of that culvert. If that water is moving so quickly that it's washing plants away, or if it's washing some of the rocks away themselves, I would want to look at, are those stones big enough? Do they need to be increased? Do we need to have some check dams in that system to try to slow the water down a little bit? And that way you increase the likelihood that your plants are going to survive and be able to do their part too. We have certainly seen across the region that some of these storm drains and ditch systems and things like that in some of our neighborhoods, they were installed when the neighborhood was built. And we've seen such an increase in change in our precipitation that those systems are no longer adequate to manage that amount of water. And so I would take a multifaceted approach to look at it and see what else could be done.
Thank you very much, Robyn. That was really informative.
Thank you for watching this presentation by the James City County Williamsburg Master Gardener Association. Please visit our website for more educational videos at jccwmg.org.
I call this meeting to order. Please silence your phones. And folks that are on Zoom, if you would please mute your connection. As you know that I'm here today, and that's a strange event because I'm your past president, and I keep looking at December to see that I'm going off the board, and I keep inching closer to that date. Dave Clevenger asked me to let you all know that his wife is not doing well, and he is spending all his time in Charlottesville. So the rest of the board is trying to, pick up the pieces and make sure things move along. He wishes us all well, and I know we want to keep him and his wife Fran in our thoughts and prayers because it's a very difficult time for that family at this point in time. I noticed that even though I was talking over the crowd as they were taking a break, that most of the apparel seems to be gone over there. So thank you all for doing that. Sherry wanted me to let you all know that we got some very good books. Somebody donated some books on trees. Is that right? And they're available for our use up at the extension office. So the one thing, did you ever find out who donated those books? So who is it so we can thank that person? Okay, so anyway, if you have good books that can be shared with the rest of the group, don't hesitate to bring them in and either have them available for somebody else to pick up and use or to donate to our library. They will be put to good use. I'm going to say this under President's comments, but the nominating committee still has a few positions open. And if folks are interested in giving up a little bit of their time every month, it would be appreciated. We are looking for some good people to join the board and help us work and continue our programming. Dot, as I said, the board seems to be falling apart this month a little bit. Dot is not feeling well either, and so she can't be here to harangue you about this. So consider yourself harangued, but we really are looking for good people to work on the board. It's fun and it helps out the organization. We cannot continue the programs that we have, either the monthly programs or the projects, without an active board. So ask you to consider, joining the board. And if you get a call, to say yes instead of no, I can't do it. So that's what we're doing there. I need to advance. That's about all the announcements that I have. But what I'd like to do is something that I did when I was president was, does anybody else have any announcements that they want to make at this point in time? Let us know what your group is doing. Okay. Now I will ask, the minutes were distributed with the meeting announcement. Are there any additions or corrections to last month's meeting? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Say your names out loud so Wayne can catch them. Mary Grogan, Julie Griffin, first and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The treasurer's report was also distributed with the meeting announcement. Are there any questions on the treasurer's report? Whoops. You actually want to see something? There we go. One more. This board is so prepared. So are there any questions or comments on the treasurer's report? Seeing and hearing nothing. The treasurer's report is accepted as submitted. Membership. As I said, Dot is not feeling well. So she's been chair of the nominating committee, and we still have we're still in an active mode at this point in time. The other thing that the membership, later in the program, we're going to be handing out the membership milestone awards for 2024. Also, there were some that were not picked up from 2023, so they are available also, but that will be later. Is there any questions or comments about membership? You all happy? Gay? Okay. So association announcements. Okay. Crystal?
Good morning again, everyone. Our training team asked that I share a message today about a member of the 2025 intern class. And so I'm going to read that message. It's with heavy hearts that we share the passing of Gail Taylor on August 25th, 2025. Gail was a remarkable individual. She was creative, intelligent, strong-willed, and full of enthusiasm. She was truly a force of nature. Despite facing serious health challenges, and no matter how bad she felt, Gail was determined to attend class each Tuesday and Thursday. Becoming an Extension Master Gardener was a long-held goal of Gail's, an item on her bucket list. She was just 2 weeks away from completing the course when she was no longer able to attend class. Terry McGlennon deeply regrets that she couldn't be here today to share this information with you. However, she also asked me to share that there are tentative plans to honor Gail's memory with a bench at the Williamsburg Botanical Garden. More information will be shared soon for those individuals that would like to contribute. Thank you.
And we go to our opportunity calendar. And I'm going to go here. As you can see, there are a lot of things going on. And as we get towards the end of the year, these opportunities are going to diminish. So I would suggest if you're looking to get in hours, that you go on to Better Impact, go to the opportunities calendar, and see where you can contribute some of your time, volunteer some of your time and effort. Coming up specifically though on our opportunities calendar, I am happy to report that the Lewis Ginter Garden Tour is sold out. So we are. Okay, I keep forgetting to push the button, so I've got people helping me out. So we are going to have a full house. We will start boarding the bus at 7 o'clock. And the tours start at what time? What?
I want to just say really quickly, this has been a wonderful experience, and I have to thank this wonderful woman right here who is herself a force of nature. Janet, she's volunteered to coordinate the garden tour this year, and she took it and ran with it. And despite her extensive travels, she's done a fantastic job. The bus is full. She's reached out to community members, EMGs. She's Colonial Williamsburg is actually sending 6 of their staff to get to know Master Gardeners as part of the travel, and she is just amazing. I just can't say enough about how wonderful she is and what a great job she's done. So if we could just give Janet a round of applause, and she'll share a few things with us.
Oh, let's give credit where credit's due. This was Crystal's vision. I'm wingman on this, and she's lead. Her vision was to have a day where master gardeners could get to know each other. You know, there are a lot of us that work on our separate projects, and we know the people in our little pods and so forth, but having a day together in an environment that we all enjoy, gardens, and combine that with instruction, continuing education, credits and so forth. That was Crystal's vision. So she kept the registration closed until we filled half the bus with our local James City County, Williamsburg Master Gardeners. And then we opened it up. And the person, as Crystal was mentioning, that really stepped forward was Joanne Chapman. She is the head of landscaping for Colonial Williamsburg, and she so much appreciates us. Pat Rathke, for example, Barb, Floyd, who's talking and not listening, of course. At any rate, Kathy, Liz, everybody who works in the Colonial Williamsburg Gardens, Joanne wanted to say thank you. So she's spending the day with us, and she's also allocated her budget to take 5 of her staff members to get to know us as volunteers. So Crystal's vision of bonding amongst us has expanded to bonding to other members of the gardening community in our area. 2 other thank yous. Dave Banks, if you're on there in virtual land, and I don't know if Ann's on there in virtual land, Ann Hunt, generously are sponsoring 2 students from the College of William and Mary. And they're botany students. It's in the biology department. There's not a botany department, but biology department. So we'll have 2 students with us. So please reach out to the students. They'll probably be pretty easy to recognize. They won't have white hair. And also get to know the Colonial Williamsburg landscapers that with Joanne that she's bringing. It's pretty generous. 6 people taking off for an entire day to say thank you to us. So, and thank you very much to Crystal. You're busy.
It's just awesome. Really is. It's amazing how things grow and evolve and become more inclusive. And we, stretch our tentacles out and become more aware of the community, and the community becomes more aware of who we are. It's a really good relationship, and this has proven, what more we can do and how these connections are made. So Lewis Ginter, that's coming up on September 11th. Michelle Gerard is doing the plant seed plant and seed share on October 25th. Michelle, do you have anything you want to add? If you could come down?
No tomato costume for this. So the Williamsburg Regional Library has scheduled a fall plant share. That's not a plant sale, it's a share. And we know that fall is a good time when everybody gets out and you divide your plants. And we're hoping that you all will take this opportunity to pot up those extra thinnings and plants that you might have too many of and donate to the fall plant share. Great thing about that is not only will you be sharing with the community and your fellow master gardeners, but also you can take home maybe some plants that have been on your list for a while. Our very own Judy Kinshaw Ellis is going to be speaking at that event. We're also going to have the help desk, I believe, has committed to that as well. So we're going to have definitely a presence there. You can use the QR code if you want to save that on your phone. More than likely, they're going to be setting up, a lot of stuff is still kind of in the preliminary planning stages, but they're going to be setting up the donations via Sign Up Genius. So be looking for that in your email box, or maybe probably on the Facebook page, something like that once that gets set up. So hope to see everybody there. Thank you.
Gary?
Good morning. The intensive rain and heat this summer and some other factors all contributed to exponential growth at the Clarabird Baker Garden. Perhaps all of you know about this as well. But as we look forward to the fall, the 3 or 4 of us volunteers are on the schedule to have a surgery and a downsizing and moving and full-time work. And we just wanted to provide an opportunity to provide some help to get the garden ready for the students this fall. The garden is a work in progress. It's almost ready, but it has more to do, some weeding, some spreading of mulch and walkways. So on September 12th, in the morning, couple of hours, we invite you to come and participate in that. And we'll be able to have the garden ready for students as they come to the garden. Thank you.
At this time, Mary Whitley. Mary, would you come up and talk to us about the information session?
All right. Hi, I'm Mary Whiteley, and I was in the class of 2024. I'm currently on the training team, and we just wanted to share that on Saturday, October 25th, the same day as the plant share, but in the morning, we will be in this place in the library's auditorium, seeing people who are interested in becoming a master gardener. We have the longest list we've ever had of potential candidates, thanks to all of the information at the farmers markets. We believe that's really spread the word now that we're back in Williamsburg and also New Kent and Toano. So if you know anyone who would like to be on that list, encourage them to come to this meeting. The training team is meeting often, tweaking, and the class is always being updated and hopefully improved. We will open up for the registration on November 1st, and we only take like 22, 20, maybe 25, hoping, but we don't have a very big class. So people need to register that day. I don't know anything else. Training team, anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you.
The training team is really a team. They always sit together, always over there. The next thing, I got to remember to push the button. Okay. The opportunities to support our master gardeners who are out there doing special things. Did they want to come up, Wayne? No, okay. Okay, we have outreach presentations. Wallace Williamson will be presenting an introduction to container gardening from 1 to 2 at the Virginia Peninsula Community College. And it is open to everyone. Do they have to pre-register? I guess not. So from 1 to 2 on September 9th. And on Wednesday, September 10th, Judy Kinshaw Ellis will be doing an introduction to native plants. If we can always use some help on that. Judy will be talking up at Freedom Park at the Interpretive Center from 6:30 to 7:30. Again, it's open to the public, so you do not have to register ahead of time. Any questions on opportunities? And these are in kind of highlighting some special ones that are coming up in the next month. At this time, we are going to be presenting awards and recognition ceremony for milestone events for our master gardeners. Luke, did you want to say anything to start with? Okay, so I'm going to be calling out the names, and Luke and Wayne will be presenting, and I've got to press the button again. So we're going to start off with the 250 hours. This is for 2024. Amanda Kiritz. Ann Norden. And Beverly Davis. No Beverly. Connie Motley. Dino O'Connell. Ellen Lee. I saw Jay Templin. Jody Stevens. AJ. Linda Becker. And Leisha Basin Davis. Leisha? And they achieved 250 hours in 2024. And since we're 2/3 of the way through 2025, I'm sure they've accrued a number of hours again this year. So thank you. So 500 hours. Alexandra Muley. Camille Fisher. Frank had to leave. Janet Fender. Yay, Janet. Well, there's a few more names, Janet. Linda Berryman. Mary Grogan. Nancy Leah. And Dot Finnegan, who couldn't be with us today. So these are our 500-hour 2024. And now we go to our 1,000-hour recognitions. Barry Holland. Barry here today? Barry. Debbie Saneet. I think you're up there too. Oh no. Debbie's limping. I didn't notice that before. Elizabeth Myers. Elizabeth here? Gary Griffin. Mary Syke. Mary here too? Pam Van Cutt. Susan Barton. Susan Zickel. Susan here? And Terry McGlennon. I believe she had to leave. These are our 1,000-hour recognitions. Now for lists that aren't quite so long, 2,000 hours. Jean Johnston. I don't think she's here today. 3,000 hours. Pat Abrams. Pat? She's not. I thought I saw her. And 4,000 hours is David Banks, who I'm sure is on the Zoom. 2, 3, 4. Wow. Those were our 2000 or 2024 milestone award winners or recipients. And let's give them another round of applause. Now, just as an announcement, we do have some 2023 pins for people who have not picked them up from last year. We cannot mail them out because it costs over $7 for us to mail a pin and a certificate out from the post office. So yeah, so it gets to be quite expensive to do that, and we would rather see our money going to to our projects. Frederick Rojek, David Kraus, Carol Mayfield, Pauline Price, if any of you are here. 250 hours from last year. 500 hours from last year, Pam Hatton, Marianne Teague, Kimberly Silver, Joanna Wooten. This is from 2023, 1,000 hours. Pam Mageland, Susan Needlinger, I'm sorry, Susan. Jeanette Martino and Kathy Johnston. Please, do we have somebody who gets a certificate? Yay! So 3,000 hours from last year, Mitzi Balma. I guess she's out planting a tree or something. Playing pickleball. I don't know. Anyway, I want to thank all of you for the number of hours you contribute to this organization. As we like to tell our politicians and stuff, the number of hours we contribute to the community is worth about $30 an hour. So when you look at the 20 or 30,000 hours this organization contributes, that's a significant amount of donations that we give back to the community, not just in beautiful gardens and educational information, but actual stuff that somebody else would have to pick up or our taxes would have to pick up if we weren't doing it. So thank you to all of you for all the hard work that you do all year, every year. So give yourselves a round of applause. Oh, and we have emeritus. And they didn't give me a list. Luke? Oh.
So we have two emeritus today. We have Hope Yellick as well as Liz Favre. I don't know if either of them are.
You got to get your picture taken, Liz. Sorry. And thank you to all. Okay, and Wayne is going to come up, since I don't know how to do this, and is going to do our crossword. And once we finish the crossword, we will be dismissed.
Okay, before we get to the crossword, at the end, if you're going to pick up an award for somebody that you'll see in the garden, to see Luke at the end. So, excuse me. Okay, so the first crossword is an important factor to consider when designing a flowering bulb gardens. This is about bulbs. And again, this is from Ann Hunt. So, season. Okay. I think that's too long. Timing. Okay. Okay, number 4 crossed found on Daffodil Lane. You got that one. Number 7, tulips, daffodils, and hyacinths are examples of what kind of bulbs? That's, how about true bulbs? Number 8, if storing bulbs, do so in a blank dry spot. Ooh. Okay, got that one. See if Mitzi here, she'd get them all. A great time to plant bulbs, though not the only time. Fall. Okay. All right, well, one down. Do this after flowering has ended. How about divide? All right, 3 down. True or false? Soft bulbs that have started sprouting are best. No. And 5 down. An informal, naturalistic grouping of multiple flowering bulbs. Drift. Okay. 6 down. Usually the first to bloom. Crocus. And the worst planting soil for bulbs. Hey, we got it. Just to let you know, Mitzi will be having she'll be presenting about bulbs at the Williamsburg Farmers Market this Saturday. She's the subject matter expert for this coming Saturday, so come on out, ask her a question or just support her. Okay? Thank you very much.
I will ask, is there any other business or announcements to be made in front of this group? Hearing none, class dismissed.